back to another episode of Grassroots Racer. This week I'll talk to a bloke called Aaron Lee. He's the 2019 New South Wales Formula V champion. He's also a great sim racer who does a bit of iRacing and I guess a bit of everything. And you also did some RC championships. So how are you tonight, Aaron?
Oh, I'm very good. How are you going?
I'm great, and it's great to have you on the show tonight. But to start off the episode, let's talk about your passion for motorsport. So where did it all begin?
My passion for motorsport started when I was a very young lad. I used to go and watch my dad race mini sports sedans. He raced for many years, from before I was born through into the 90s. It was one of those things where I was at the track. I was basically that kid who skips rocks in the dam at Oran Park, slid down the grass hill on cardboard, and slid under the fence at the motocross track at Amaru Park. They were just my childhood days were unreal. Spent at the racetrack, and that was my passion. I sort of evolved from there, and I can only blame my old man, I guess, from the passion of motorsport.
Nah, it's very cool that your dad used to race, and you said he used to race sedans, so that's really cool. Did he do many national or international events?
I wouldn't say international events. He did the James Hardy 12-hour in 1992, I think it was, in a GDI Swift, where they won their class with Mark Brame, and did really well, actually. With the mini sports sedan, he raced many different, versions of the mini sports sedan. Ended up racing the Crossflow, cars. But yeah, look, he didn't go too far. We've always been limited on money, which is pretty much where every family or every race driver here, especially here in Australia and around the world, sort of hit a brick wall. I would love to go and race sports sedans or V8 supercars or Formula 3 or anything like that, but it's at that point of can you afford it? Can you afford the rest of your life? Housing prices are really, really expensive. And it's one of those things where when you're a kid growing up, you don't realise how much money your parents put into your sporting, or whether it's motor racing or soccer or anything, or with my kids BMX racing as well. It's you don't realise how much actual money comes out of their pocket and they actually put into your competitive sport. And it didn't gel with me until I was older, where I realised how much effort my father put in and mother put into my racing.
As I'm getting older, I'm starting to realise that my parents do a lot for me. Because as I was younger, it was sort of hard to realise. But yeah, racing's really expensive. So people like me who just want to race, I got to learn that it is quite expensive. And you said that your dad gave you the passion to start racing. So I'm guessing that you did some karting?
Yeah, so when I was younger, we started out doing karts. I remember racing cadets under the CAMS banner back in the day in an old Demon chassis. We got from a family friend. And yeah, it was one of those things where we did really well in karting. It took a little while to get right at the front. We had some pretty competitive guys, and Neil McFadden and James Gurr and things like that, who we were racing against at that point. The Michael Carusos and Mark Winterbottoms were a little bit older than us, so they're about 3 years older than me. So they went through, and we looked up to them. And on the way, when they got up into seniors and moved into cars, I ended up running a bit of junior clubman and things like that. But it was never something that we could afford to race. So we sort of stayed in J's in the national classes, and we went and did nationals over in WA. That was pretty cool. It was an experience. That was my first run in a top kart, and then after that we ran a few years, and then it got to a point where I chose a different path in life, and my father said, well, you either pull your head in and stop running around chasing girls, and otherwise I'm going to stop paying for your go-karting. And I chose the girls, so that's where the go-karting stopped just after my junior career.
Yeah, so at the time that you said you went chasing after girls, then you got into sim racing, and now I know that you're a really good sim racer. So can you tell us a bit about your sim racing career?
Yeah, so sim racing for me started because I wanted to fulfill a desire of mine to race cars, and I just couldn't afford to buy a race car. I looked at go-karts. I ran a few race meetings in a kart again, but it wasn't the same. It was different. I wasn't enjoying the karting side of things, and we played with the PlayStation with Gran Turismo and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't realistic for what I was doing. So I decided to, I guess, look at the PC software, and then I found iRacing. This was probably in 2011, 12, and I fired it up. I bought a Logitech wheel from JB Hi-Fi and just set it up on a desk, and away we went. And to be honest, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And a couple of years later, I decided to get back into it and gave it another go, pulled out Logitech wheel, fired it up again, and realized that field of view and settings and everything else played a big part in how the car felt. So I went about building my own little rig. So I just went and got some 20mm by 20mm tubing and welded up a frame, found a car seat like a dodgy race car seat from a friend's place, bolted that on, and had a single monitor in front of me, and off I went. I started playing with settings, and I got better and better, and then I upgraded my computer, and then I decided that I needed to go 3 screens. So I bought 3 screens and set up about making a rig with 3 screens. Learned more about field of view and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, we ended up doing really, really well. We won plenty of races. We were involved in championships and leagues. I won the All-Stars Invitational twice. We finished 5th at the Le Mans 24-hour, 5th in the world in the top split. That was with Evolution Racing Team in the prototype. That was a good experience and great guys. But yeah, look, it's been an interesting ride to the point where now I run a Oculus Rift headset, and I've gone back to triple screens, but I keep going back to the virtual reality. The immersion and everything else is just unreal. Yeah, the graphics quality isn't the best, but at the same time, the immersion, looking around, feeling like you're in the car, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'd like to do some sort of virtual reality on iRacing one day, test it out. But to be honest, I don't think my computer could really hold it. Can barely do it. Yeah, can barely do a 3-hour race. I did the Watkins Glen 6-hour. We were doing really well, and then we got net coded because we were gonna win, but I don't think we were near the top split.
It does happen in the sim racing world, especially iRacing. It's very frustrating when you're doing really well and there's a net code or someone doing something silly, and yeah, it's one of those things. You just got to take it with a grain of salt, and it happens within everything in life. Sometimes you just got to swallow that, I guess, anger and just get on with it.
Yeah, sim racing is a bit like that, and you're very good. I've seen some stuff, and you've told me a bit about your sim racing. Would you say that Le Mans was your highlight of your sim racing?
It's one of the highlights. There's many highlights, and one thing I never really did was document what I did in the sim racing world. The All-Star Invitational events were probably a really good highlight because I never expected to do so well in them. But it's just, it's just one of those things. There's even been, I guess, highlights where we've been up against really good drivers across the world and we've done really well. Even just doing practices and getting involved and tuning the car and coming out on top of the list where you would never think that I would be. And even now, I don't get on the sim as much as what I used to. It's, I've got 2 kids now and they swallow up a lot of time and work as well. So when I can, I get on. But by the time I get on, do some testing, set up the car, jump into a race, it's not as enjoyable as what it used to be. I wish I could spend more time on it, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Life gets in the way.
So I guess you also, while you were doing this, you won an Australian RC championship. Am I right?
So from 2007 through to 2016, 17, I raced radio control cars or model cars, depending on what part of the world you're in. And we went through many different versions. We started out with nitro cars and we ended up racing electric and nitro. We raced touring cars and then we raced 1/8 scale, basically prototypes. We call them pan cars, but they're prototypes. Won a New South Wales state title and won a national title. And then in 2014, we went to the World Championships and raced overseas and finished 43rd. So top 50 in the world for 2014 wasn't too bad. I can't complain.
That's absolutely insane. I know some people like Lewis Hamilton used to do it. And you said that it helps with car setup. So I don't really understand how, but how do you believe it helps?
So with the model cars or radio control cars, they've got pretty much every setting that you could think of, whether it's slow and high speed dampening, spring rates, you've got roll centers, you've got camber caster toe, you've got Ackerman, you've got all different kinds of things, you've got downforce with, especially with certain bodies, wing placement, you've got a lot of setting adjustments on these cars. What I learned was how much weight transfer influences behavior on cars, from the amount of weight you put on each tire at different times, and how you can balance that to achieve a better handling car. What I learned from my radio control car days, I now translate into my real car days. I can get in the car, and my dad says to me all the time, "You can't feel that," and I'll say, "Watch," and I'll make a change, and you'll come back in and go, "Oh, you're quicker." I said, "Yeah, I know what I was looking for. I know what the car needs to do." Some people say, "I don't understand how you can feel that, or how you can sort of understand what you need and just make a change and it works." But for me, it all comes from learning radio control cars. You're not sitting in the car, you're watching the car, you're feeling it through the radio. It's a complete different feeling, but the same principle applies. You get on the brakes, the weight transfers to the front wheels. You turn left and right, the weight moves left to right. It's how you balance that is how much of whether it's an oversensitive car or a dull and docile car to drive, or whether it's completely really well balanced front to rear. So making those sort of changes in the Formula V, although it's a different type of car with the engine in the back, and it does get a little bit light under braking and everything else, you can still balance that with that weight transfer and how you control it. I definitely learned from the model car racing.
So yeah, you just mentioned how it helps with Formula V. I guess we'll move into that now. Do you remember your first Formula V race?
Yes and no. Probably not my first Formula V race. My first Formula V race, we just bought a car. It was an older car. It was a 20-year-old car at that point. And our intention was to go and race and have some fun. I didn't want to get to an age where I couldn't race anymore. I knew kids were coming along, and I decided that it's a time to sell my road car, because I had a company car, and buy a race car. We went looking about different classes, and we looked at Aussie racing cars, Formula Ford, even looked at sport sedans, Formula 3. I didn't really want to do production car racing. It wasn't really my vibe. I wanted a race car, an open wheeler, or a prototype, something like that. And we looked at what we can afford, and that was Formula V. So we went out looking for a car, and probably jumped the gun a little bit. I probably could have looked around a little bit longer, but we found this older car. It was a good price, came with a trailer. So we went and purchased this car, and I did a few practice days, got my license, my OLT, and went out and raced. But we knew we were down on power. When we bought the car, we were told the engine was tired, and it's done plenty of miles. So we knew that we had to update the engine, and we raced twice, I think at the end of 2017. And then we came out in 2018 with a fresh built engine and gearbox by David Cutts at JASA. And we came out and won the first race in the old car.
Would you say your favorite thing when you started racing in Formula V? Like you freshened up the car and you just went straight out there and you became a winner.
No, look, it's definitely one of those things that you don't forget. It was there's been many I guess good memories from Formula V. That's definitely one of them. It's had that video is on YouTube. It's had over 60,000 views. It still keeps climbing, especially now iRacing has got a Formula V. The amount of comments we get about iRacing and comparing it to the real world and how good the racing is and everything else, it's better than Formula One. People love it. So it's still climbing. We've had, I think, 10,000 more views in the last couple of days. So it does keep pushing forward. But yeah, look, moving through 2018, we had a really good run. I think we had a DNF throughout the year in that year, which hurt our championship hunt in New South Wales. Then we went to the Nationals in 2018, which was here in Sydney, which was good for us. So we decided to run the national title. We didn't have a really good weekend, to be honest. We were sort of running around, I wouldn't say mid-packs. I think there was 35 or 45 cars, something like that. So there was a big field of cars. And we were running up the front, and then I had a steering rack come loose, and then I ended up finishing, 15th or something. And then we started the next race 15th, work our way up, and then something happened, finished 8th, avoiding incidents along the way. And I'm pretty sure we started the race, I think about 13th. We started the final. And it was a long race. It was really hot too. It was like 38 degrees, I think it was. It was a really hot day. And we basically went out there and raced head down, and we ended up finishing 3rd, but 0.2 of a second behind the leader. So how close we got was unbelievable. I never expected it. It was one of those things where, we went into that meeting to be happy to finish top 10 or just outside of the top 10, and to be that close to the leaders. We knew we had a few problems that weekend with the car that we were just driving around as well. So yeah, look, it was one of those things. It was a great introduction, or great first year to Formula V racing, or even motorsport car racing in general. It was really good. But when you talk about those special moments, coming back into the pits after that race and being all happy and chuffed and absolutely worn out. We'll get to that in a minute, but seeing my father there after everything and the tears running down his face, of just joy and happiness, and those are the moments that you can't take away, or get over or whatever else. They're the moments which will stay with me forever.
Yeah, you just said how it was such a hot race and you had problems all weekend, and then you finished 3rd and only 0.2 behind the leader. I guess at the time you would be happy and sad that you were 0.2 away, but happy that you were able to perform so well. And, just seeing your dad so happy, it was probably a really exciting moment for you.
Very exciting moment. I definitely wasn't sad. In the weeks afterwards, you look back and go, if I had just got on the gas a little bit earlier out of that corner, I could have made up a little bit more time. And you're always hard on yourself. If you're not hard on yourself and you don't criticize your driving or your car setup or anything like that, you're not a racer anymore. You're just there just to enjoy yourself. And we become very competitive. Whether it's go-karts, cars, BMX, radio control cars, everything becomes really competitive. We are racers in our family, and even my kids are exactly like that as well. So, I wouldn't say that I was sad. I was over the moon to achieve what we achieved on that weekend, and I don't think I could have achieved anything better. But at the same time, you look back and go, well, if I changed this or I'd done that, or if I made a pass 2 laps before, and you can position yourself a little bit better. So I definitely learned from that. But at that point in my Formula V racing career, if you want to call it, that's probably the best, or that was better than what I would have thought that we would have ever done.
I can agree what you say there, especially with the self-criticism in a way. You go home and you go, if only I had used the extra more road, and it's definitely relatable. Yeah,
definitely. But before the Nationals, Dad and I built our engine for the first time. I wouldn't say we fully built the engine. We just refreshed the engine. We've been given a lot of guidance from the whole Formula V community. I must admit, I've got friends who are involved in other categories, and you don't have that. I guess I wouldn't know what to call it, but in other categories, you don't get the help. So you get help to a certain point, but I wouldn't be where I am today with my knowledge of Formula V or even the mechanical and engineering side of it if it wasn't for certain other competitors or families who gave me that guidance and experience. It's been an absolutely unreal journey. And just before that national championship in 2018, Dad and I built our first engine. We built it. We knew we had a few problems with blow-by, and the piston rings didn't run in how we wanted them, but we went and raced anyway because that's all we had. So we knew we had a few little issues, and we learned along the way. Now we're at the point where we're building our own engines from the ground up, still with guidance, especially from David Cutts at JASA. He's been an absolute legend when it comes to asking questions and helping out, or even just hey, I'm not sure, can you just measure this for me? And he's been absolutely awesome. Without him, I wouldn't know what I know today about it Volkswagen engines. It's the last engine I ever thought I'd ever build. But we're doing gearboxes and engines, and even people like Michael Kinsella are helping us with the engineering side of, you know, data and tiny little things that, you know, that no one's going to tell you unless you really ask and dig around. And I try and get in their heads as much as possible and ask those technical questions, and I'm very lucky that they answer them and they help me out. And that's why we are where we are today, is because of the community. It's not just because we've got a passion for it, it's because we put ourselves in the right circle, and they definitely help us out.
Yeah, so as you just mentioned, you had all that help, and I guess that's what built you you could have called it an amazing car for 2018. And then in 2019, you finished first in the New South Wales Formula V Championship, and were you really proud considering you had competition like Stephen Butcher, Michael Kinsella, and Craig Spark, because those guys are really quick?
They are really quick. We were a little bit lucky in 2019 that a couple of them didn't race the whole year. But you never know whether it would have changed the outcome. We had a really, really quick car in 2019. We made a few setup adjustments to the old girl, and basically the thing was a rocket ship. It was absolute missile. So we ran that all year. I think we won 8 races in a row, which is almost unheard of in Formula V these days. It's so close to racing, and we were just so lucky that, you know, our strategy paid off and the car was good. We were also playing with engines and learning how to build more ourselves. So we were doing top end rebuilds pretty regularly as well, mainly because we were experimenting, trying to get things, you know, quicker, learning the rules, things like that. We came on the wrong side of the post-race scrutineering. At one point, we were over with our valve lift on one cylinder when we were putting engines together. Dad put his hand up for this one, where he swapped over a push rod, put an exhaust push rod into an intake, and basically sent it over lift. Pretty much exactly what happened to Scott McLaughlin at Bathurst with his qualifying engine. But we learned from there that that if we're going to build our own engines, we need to have the tools to be able to measure that, and we have to make sure that we are within those limits within tolerances all the time. And we've been learning ever since. We've been, you know, running that fine line of, you know, running the edge of the rules, but without going over. Of course, Formula V is very well regulated. It's not a, I guess it is a restricted class to a point, but the rules are so regulated that it keeps everybody so close together. Yeah, there is a black art behind certain things. You wouldn't just get a standard Volkswagen 1600 and chuck it in the car and expect to win. But there are a lot of little, you know, black art secrets that people will tell you, they won't tell you, and you got to learn for yourself. And yeah, it's been a great ride. But yeah, 2019 was awesome to win that championship. It was a relief at the end of it. It come down really close with Craig Spark at the end. He pushed me the whole way. It was definitely a very good year, and that was the last year that we were on the Yokohama tyres, and that's when we decided to look at building a new car. So we were. It was actually, I was overseas. I was in Sri Lanka, and I dropped the comment to my dad a few times about should we build a new car? Can we go faster with a new car? We're running out of setup options on the 20-year-old car and things like that. And a car came up for sale a couple of times, and I sent them to Dad, and he just ignored them. And then one came up, and I sent it to him while I was in Sri Lanka, and I didn't hear back from him, which is pretty standard for Dad. So no worries, all good and well. And then when we got back to Australia, he pulled me aside and said, "Is this what you want to do?" And I said, "Look, I don't know." I said, "Am I going to go faster?" And he's like, "Look, there's only one way to find out. Let's go and have a look at it." And the car was in Brisbane, so it was a bit of a trek, bit of a 12-hour drive to go and have a look at it. And we knew what we had to pay for it to get the car back, and we knew what we wanted to do with it. It was the car wasn't in the best condition. We got the car back, and the first thing we did was completely strip it. We cut the whole front end off. We put a whole new front end on. We did some other setup changes and configuration to suspension. We designed and built our own bell cranks for the front suspension. You know, there's a lot of little things we did along the way. I won't go into like big detail, but you know, that engineering side of the car we have now was a lot of thought and arguments that Dad and I had along the way, and a lot of hours put into it, to the point where my partner has turned around and said, you're spending too much time on the race car, what about your family, sort of thing. But we had to get it done, and we had a timeline to get it done in, so we had to push really hard to get it, you know, finished. And it was one of those things where we had the car. I bought a TIG welder. I learned how to TIG weld. I learned how to make carbon fiber parts, you know, just by converting everything from aluminium to carbon fiber. I saved 7.5 kilos in the car as we got it. So yeah, there's a lot of things we did along the way. And then we dropped our engine and gearbox in it, put our dashboard and all our data logging and all that sort of stuff into the car as well, and then got it painted in fluoro orange. And it was a really good car. Straight out of the box, we shook it down at Wakefield Park in the wet, and straight out of the box, the car behaved really well. It was really good to drive. And then we went out in the dry 2 weeks later. This is during COVID last year, and shook it down for the first time in the dry. I was on my own because of COVID down at Wakefield, and the car was on the pace. Straight out of the box in the second session, we were good enough for a pole time. So we were very happy with that. And then we went out and raced. We won that first race meeting on debut. Daniel Reynolds had a few problems with the safety car restart that put him a little bit back in the field for the last race, and we had a cracker of a run with Aaron Pace in that third race to come away with the victory. So that was really good to be able to have the car out on debut and to win was awesome. And then we went to Eastern Creek, had a cracker of a run on the Friday. Car was absolute missile, and lap times were unreal. And then we blew a motor on Saturday morning in qualifying, and that was sort of it. And then we've been sort of playing with engines ever since. And yeah, it's been one of those tricky rides where we built a whole new engine, new crank, new everything, did things our own way. But some of the smaller details with the carburetor and things like that, we didn't take into account when we were building the engine, and we learnt that that all those little things need to be all lined up, and they all have to be right to be able to make power in a regulated class. If you just build a good motor, you know, and you've got an exhaust leak, it's going to hinder your performance enough that you notice it on the track. And I always said to my dad, I said, the car, it hasn't got the sparkle, it hasn't got, it's not responsive like it used to be. There's something wrong. And it wasn't until Michael Kinsella came over and said, what's wrong? What's going on? I said, I don't know. I'm trying to work it out. And when we started looking at carburetors and fuel pressure, and we were down on fuel pressure, it was one of those things that I never thought to look at. We fixed that up beginning of this year. After Winton, we came back from Winton and we knew we were down on power. We went to Eastern Creek and I was getting absolutely flogged. But at Eastern Creek, we found that we were down on fuel pressure heaps. We looked into the carburetor and hadn't been rebuilt probably for 15 years. So we gave it a complete rebuild. We rebuilt the engine. We've done a lot of other things. Went out to Wakefield Park and our speed traces were back up to where they were in 2019, for example, or mid 2000s. So yeah, look, it was one of those things where, because we're doing everything ourselves, mainly because we enjoy it, but because it saves me a lot of money. To pay somebody to build engines is expensive, and sorry to all the engine builders out there, but if you can do it yourself, it's very rewarding as well. So it saves me a lot of money, but I definitely enjoy it. The time spent with Dad building engines and the lessons that I've learnt along the way, there's been good and bad times. There's been times where Dad and I have been swearing at each other and arguing, and then we've been walking away, and my mum's in between going, what are you guys arguing for? You know, and we're like, because we're arguing about 1,000th of an inch of something that's like, it's not even relevant. But the next day we go back out there and we work on the car together, and we both learn as we go along.
Yep. You do learn, and I'm guessing the car that we're talking about is the one behind you right now.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's very nicely painted, and it looks beautiful. So you guys did a great job on the bodywork, that's for sure. And there's guessing there's a lot under the bodywork as well that you just mentioned, a lot of it there. Started the 2021 Australian Formula V Championship at Winton. You actually did all right. You got third place at in the final, I'm pretty sure. So that wasn't too bad. But have you done any other rounds? Because I couldn't find anything if you'd done any other rounds. The Australian Championship. But how do you think you'll go this year?
Finished second in that race. We were very, well, I wouldn't say lucky, but we were lucky. But two of the front running competitors took themselves out in mid race. They had a coming together and one of those things. But we were very lucky. But we had it comes on the back of building your own engines and learning. We didn't know that we had this problem since we built the engine in end of 2020, and down at Winton, I was coming out of every corner and watching the car in front pull 2 car lengths on me, and it was frustrating. And we couldn't work out why. We were trying everything. We were looking at data. Being at a new track, we didn't know that our speed trace was down. We looked at our dyno, and our dyno was down, and our dyno was doing a few little funny things, but there's not much we could do because it was right before we went to Winton, so we just had to race how it was. So we did that, and that's when we came back to Sydney, and I was frustrated because in any racing environment, you don't want your competitors to be able to pull a car length or 2 in front of you, because by the time you slipstream them to the next corner, there's no chance of passing them. So it was a bit of a frustrating weekend. Although what we learnt was that in practice, when I was in clear air on my own, the car was extremely fast. The car handled extremely well. But when we got into a situation where we were behind somebody, they would hold me up a little bit into the corner and through the corner, and then on the exit, they would pull a gap on me. So I couldn't get the lap times that we were doing on the Friday when it comes to Saturday, Sunday. But yeah, it was a bit of a crash fest down there. Actually, all the races had safety cars or red flags on the Friday practice. It was a bit of interesting, I guess, eye-opening first round of the national series for me. We were supposed to run 2 weeks ago up here at Eastern Creek for the second or third round of the national series. Second round was over in Perth, which we didn't go to. No one from over here went over there, but Eastern Creek was Sydney Motorsport Park was the third round, which is what we're all going to run. We were there on the Friday practicing, and everything was really well. The car was handling great. The speed was up compared to the last time I was out there. And COVID struck, unfortunately, and got cancelled. So not much we can do, but there's one round left at the bend. Not sure what's going to happen, or if we can even go, or what the story is. And then we've got Winton for our national challenge or national championship round in October, I think it is. So we'll see what happens, but not looking good at the moment.
Well, if it is in October and I'm ready to go to the Formula V, I'll probably see you there. I might just be there watching as well. I do really wish you the best of luck. Is there anyone you'd like to thank that's made this possible so far, like sponsors and person?
The biggest influence for me is my father. My dad Clyde has helped me out so much, and not just with motorsport, with everything in life, of course. So definitely big thanks to Dad. Kane as well. Kane Alderton's helped me out heaps with pit crewing and just being there when I need him, especially down at the track. He helps me out with everything. And of course, Logitech G, Bass Hill Electrical, Galvanised Insurance, Knight Rider Designs, Evolution Racing Team, and Apollo Batteries. They're all the guys that support me. And that's one thing that I've always said to people, is that support businesses who do support motor racing, because without them, it's extremely hard for us to do what we do. And as long as these businesses are supporting motor racing, get behind them, get involved, and that's my sort of motto, I guess. And thanks to all the volunteers that come down to the racetrack. People don't see these unsung heroes. Without these volunteers, the flaggies, the officials, we don't get to race. People see V8 supercars on TV, but there are plenty of people behind the scenes who don't get recognised. But thanks to everybody out there who does get involved, all the volunteers and all the officials. Really appreciate everything you do.
I've got to agree. The officials and the organisers do a lot behind the scenes that not many people recognise. What's your social media so if people watching can go follow?
Yeah, sweet. So jump on Instagram, follow Aaron Lee Racing, and if you go into YouTube and look up Aaron Lee Formula V, you'll find a whole heap of videos of all the races over the last couple of years with the old car and the new car. There's the final race from Winton on there as well, where we finished second this year. So definitely get in there and have a crack. We're getting heaps good hits on YouTube, and share it around, view it, yeah, learn from it, have some fun, ask some questions. Happy to help anybody along the way, because I have been helped out by many people in Formula V. And yeah, if you ask questions and you're a decent person, we'll definitely help you out.
Yeah, so thank you so much for speaking to me tonight, Aaron. It's been great hearing your story and your racing career and all your experience that you've gathered over the years. I really hope that you can go out to the Bend and, you know, win. Well, there's not really much of a championship because most of it was cancelled and you couldn't really go to Perth. But I hope you do win the championship if it's still open. And then hopefully I can come out and race you in Formula V at some point.
That'd be awesome, man. Thanks very much for having me, and looking forward to seeing you on track. I know you got some special things in the back end, and hopefully that they come together. And yeah, we'll see you out there soon, man. It's awesome. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for watching Grassroots Racer every week. It's been great to hear everyone and all their stories, dreams, and all the experience that's coming from everyone. Lots of people out there love motorsport just as much as me. So remember, drive fast and take chances.